this time now. We'll call to order the regular meeting of Plan Commission. This is July 22nd, 2024. Kelly, roll, please.
Mayor Boyd, Alderperson Gantz,
Here.
Citizen Member Bush,
Here.
Alderperson Hanson,
Here.
Citizen Member Higgins,
Here.
Citizen Member Raymaker,
Here.
Citizen Member Schilling.
Here.
All here except for Mayor Boyd, which I guess he gets to be excused. Item 2, approval of the minutes of the June 24th, 2024 Plan Commission meeting. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thanks, Grant. Motion by Meeg, seconded by Grant. Any discussion or comments?
No, but your speaker is really loud.
Seeing there are none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, because I have a loud mouth. Item number 3,
No, not
public
yours.
comments on matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Plan Commission. Does anyone in person or virtually have any public comments upon matters not on the agenda? If so, please state your name. For the second time, any public comments upon matters not on the agenda? Virtual, in person? If so, please state your name. And for the third and final time, any public comments upon matters not on the agenda? All right, we will move forward. Item number 4, consideration and public action for a 4-lot CSM at 514 Lande ST, Parcel WD-144. I couldn't wait to say this. Peter.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a 4-lot certified survey map located just south of our MSC on the west side of town on Lande Street. Currently, it is a 1-lot parcel proposed to be divided into 4. You may notice that it seems that the lot widths are a little bit narrower than the typical lot width on a certified survey map, particularly for an R160 zoning district. The reason behind that is the developers are proposing to build semi-detached housing, which is kind of the equivalent of what some communities call a 0-lot line duplex area with two structures, 4 total units. That does allow the lots to be a little bit narrower than what you typically see, down to at least 35 feet. And you'll see that each of the lots are actually 41 feet and more, with lot 4 being actually 35.5 feet. So planning staff recommends approval of this request, subject to the conditions in your report. You'll notice those conditions seems a little bit long, but they are technical conditions, and we did want to make sure that there was a note being included about potential contamination near that location.
Thank you. All right. Questions, comments, discussion?
Make a motion to approve subject to staff recommendations.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion by Alderperson Hanson, seconded by Shane. Additional comments or questions?
One question is
Mark?
the existing garage, the removal of that, is that a condition? Or I noticed it was on the certified survey map.
It's identified as being removed, so that is removed as part of the land division proposal. So it's not proposed to remain on the site.
Very good.
All right. Alderperson Hanson.
I assume not, but Peter, just confirming the footprint's not moving any further to the north. Just wondering, because we do have plans to expand the MSC in the future.
Pardon? I missed. Can you say that?
The footprint, that's not moving any further north with the lot lines, correct?
Oh, the boundary of the CSM?
Yes.
No, that is the northernmost boundary of those property lines. Immediately over that line is city-owned land.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
Nope.
Good.
Seeing there are none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Look at that. Item number 4 done. Item 5, consideration and possible action for a 2-lot CSM at 2000 Commerce Drive, Parcel ED3103, ED3104, and ED3105. Peter.
Thank you. This is a project site where there are city-owned lands. Thank you. I forgot to change this picture on the screen. Where there are actually 3 lots, and when the reconfiguration is complete, there will be 2 lots. What you see in the gray area inside the black outline, that will be consolidated into one parcel, and the area that is shown as green on the air photo on the left will actually become the smaller parcel of that lot 2 for the purpose of being stormwater management. Lot 1, its intent is for being part of the business park. So planning staff recommends approval of the certified survey map, subject to the conditions that you find in your report.
Thank you. Questions, comments, discussion? And/or a motion?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mark Higgins, a second by Alderperson Gantz. Any additional comments, discussion? No? Seeing there are none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6, consideration and possible action on a proposed amendment to the 2010 City of De Pere Comprehensive Plan Update to change the future land uses map, Figure 2.6, from industrial park to commercial at 1302 South Broadway Street, 1314 South Broadway Street, and 860 O'Keefe Road, parcels ED-F01036, ED-F01037, and ED-2078. Peter.
Right, thank you. This is the first step in the proposal for an amendment to the 2010 Comprehensive Plan update. As you look up on the screen, you can see there's the air photo of the general area. The map that's kind of in the middle where it shows the subject area outlined in gray. That is the business park zoning district that it has currently. The proposal is to bring it to a commercial district. So if approved, the 3 parcels would become commercially zoned in this reddish color on our future land use map. Or it wouldn't be commercially zoned, it would be a commercial land use on our future land use map. I want to make sure that I have that straight. This is part of a multi-step process, which does include a neighborhood notification, which has already occurred. If it is recommended for approval tonight, there will be a 30-day Class 1 public hearing notification published in the newspaper to prepare for a public hearing and a final decision to be made at Common Council in, I believe September 3rd.
That's an old one on there.
I have a 2023 date on there. I apologize. On the screen it says 2023. That date should actually be September 3rd, 2024. I apologize for copying and pasting. Staff typically does not make recommendations for comprehensive plan amendments like this. So to help you out, we just wanted to show you the existing zoning that is going on in that area. We do want to clarify, part of this is next to the town of Ledgeview. So this area, and it's kind of in the southeast corner, that is this light shade of blue, this is actually town property. The gray tones are that industrial and business park zonings. The red, you can see there's a stripe of existing commercial that it will be next to already. The yellow, kind of kitty corner across the street from the area, and the brownish tone are residential zoning categories. And I think I have one more slide. Kelly has with her a resolution. It is a Plan Commission resolution. If you do choose to recommend approval of this request, you will want to approve it by approving the resolution. So this is a resolution approval, not just a simple recommendation to the Plan Commission. I'm sorry, recommendation to the council. So with my inability to give a recommendation of support or denial, I turn the project back to you for conversation and decisions.
That's great. Discussion, questions, Alderperson Hanson.
Yeah, Peter, right now it's zoned as Business Park 1. The future zoning is called for Industrial Park. Just wondering what the difference is between those two classifications.
Zoning.
Well, it's changing to commercial.
Which part are you?
I know, yeah, I'm just meaning the original comprehensive plan is calling for it to be an industrial park. I know we're talking about commercial right now.
Okay.
But I'm just wondering what the difference is between the future comp plan's original plan for it to be industrial park versus its current designation, which is Business Park 1.
Oh, okay. Business park and industrial park are kind of the same thing. As we evolved our zoning ordinance into the newer version of the zoning ordinance that we have today, we more frequently use business park for our industrial parks and business parks. We do have industrial zoning, but this is an area that, say, 10 years ago, we would have referred to it as the business park. We now refer to it as I'm sorry, we used to refer to it as the industrial park. We now would refer to it as a business park.
Okay.
But because the original comprehensive plan is from 2010, it still uses the term industrial park.
Okay. And then my understanding is the request initially came from the property owner of 1302 South Broadway for the Unity Hospice resale shop. Just wondering if you can provide more context behind what led to 1314 South Broadway and 860 O'Keefe also joining this request, and if 1302 was okay with it all being lumped together as one request.
Yes. When the original requester approached us, we did let them know that multiple properties can make the same request together, and it's in their best interest to reach out to those adjacent property owners, because I send out a letter notifying adjacent property owners, but I only get a line or two to say, hey, something's happening. I don't get to have a good conversation. We encourage those property owners to go and have a more elaborated conversation with their fellow property owners, so they know exactly what's going on, and let them know that they can kind of join in on the process. And that is what happened. The property owner to the south was interested and asked if they could become part of this project. And the property owner to the west said they were interested too, which is what caused this area to be this larger red zone than what was in the original request on day one, which was just the one property at the corner.
Okay.
That also helps to make a little bit more sense when somebody is trying to ask for a comprehensive plan amendment, because we don't like to see, zoning categories that are just kind of floating in the middle of nowhere as an island. You like to kind of see the continuation of zoning, and this helps to kind of attach and connect it to a zoning category that is to the south.
Okay. Yeah, my initial reaction is I think it makes sense in terms of the surrounding land use. Just north of it, even you have Dickenshire Crevillian, Edward Jones Financial. South of it, you have the Swan Club, and you have the sushi restaurant, and there's also a strip mall as like a dance studio and stuff. And then I know this is in Ledgeview, but just across the street, you got Quick Trip, Starbucks, and McDonald's and Capital Credit Union. So it's at the very edge of the industrial park. It's along a major corridor like South Broadway. So from my perspective, I think it makes sense given what else is surrounding it. So
I just had a question on the questions received by staff where there were no inquiries when this was published, but have there been any since then?
I have not received a inquiry. I don't know if you did, Dan. I'm only asking Dan because I was on vacation last week and I may have missed something.
The only inquiry that we received was from one of the neighboring properties requesting to be included in this process. So.
Okay. And with the comprehensive plan, I know making a change requires extra steps. And Jonathan, I think your comment about how this kind of flows with some of the other commercial retail type operations, it makes sense. But how does this fit with the new comprehensive plan that's underway? I mean, does this,
Yeah, so every change that you've looked at over the past few years has been included, and the reason why that's that comprehensive plan is a little bit on hold is at the last plan commission meeting, or sorry, not last plan commission meeting. Later on tonight, you'll hear about the housing study,
Right.
and then at the housing study, will then get folded into the demographic sections of the comprehensive plan and stuff like that. So now that we've got a few more pieces rolling in, you'll start to see some of those components. So yeah, every change that you're making here has been perpetuated forward into the future drafts of that project.
okay, very good. Thank you.
Great discussion. Wait, we still need a motion? Does anyone? Yes, right. And we're making a motion to approve the resolution.
Right.
Yes, you
I'll
can
make
do
a
it.
motion to approve the resolution.
If you are going in a approval direction, you do need to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. All right, we have a motion by Mark Higgins, second by Alderman Gantz. Any final comments, discussion? No. Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, consideration and possible action on the draft De Pere Comprehensive Housing Study and Action Plan. Take it away, Peter.
Thank you. I'm going to give a brief executive summary and then pass the ball to our consultants who are attending virtually from the sky right now.
Okay.
So this is a project that we've been working on since probably about Thanksgiving or Christmas. We brought the consultant on board, and we're planning on having this finished by early summer. It's now about midsummer, so we're very close to being right on schedule with the project. This was part of the memo that you received. We have the consultant who we anticipate is going to give us a synopsis on the purpose of the housing study, kind of an introduction on who they are, what the components of the study are, and how you can utilize them as a plan commission, a summary of the key findings that they found for the city, a summary of those goals, and then some time to answer questions that you may have. So let me see if I can just zap on over and get us to our consultants. I need to break out of this PowerPoint to do it. So there.
We don't need to do anything up here to bring them in? Just Peter?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
And
All the better for me.
yeah, we have Robert with us, and I'm going to get the PowerPoint onto the screen that Robert is assuming that I'm going to start for him. Yeah.
There.
So Robert, you can click on your volume right now. Will you?
Hi there. If you can hear us, we're not receiving any audio from the meeting. Is it possible the microphone is not attached to GoToMeeting?
Oh,
We're two associates and we're in currently different states, and neither one of us can get any sound to come out of the meeting.
Not going. 'Cause we have too
okay.
many.
So they're not. So Robert, you're saying you cannot hear us right now? No, and he can't. Oh, so this will be very interesting. Okay.
Oh, hold on, Peter, go back to that.
We've attempted the browser version, the app version, and also tried calling in, and none of those three options work for audio for us.
We go out of share mode and back. What's happening is he can't hear us.
Yeah. Is Jamie in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, they should be able to hear us.
Because I called in.
Yeah, the only thing is this one. Yeah, that won't work for us because you're doing your system.
Can you go to a point where I can send?
Yeah, he said something about the browser.
No, because we're on public.
God, I couldn't understand. Sure.
And they said they tried to call in.
Yeah.
You have a hall pass? Grant?
Okay, I'll pass Grant.
Yeah, let's try that.
Is that in your drawer?
You're not typing anything, dude. You're on it. Enable editing.
Colleague Tom could hear me, can hear me speak right now, but can't hear from the meeting. I can't hear it either at the moment. Oh, great.
Probably not nice.
I see you typing.
Well,
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll stand by. Thanks very much.
Please enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign.
He's just going to have to get creative in his meetings.
To enable audio controls, please enter your audio PIN followed by the pound or hash sign. You do not. This conference will now be recorded.
I was trying to.
Okay, so now I'm just going to go back and see.
oh, that's why the power.
So Robert, are you able to hear me now? No.
Nope.
Can you
That
hear
is
me
a no.
now?
Oh, wow, I'm glad it's something I didn't do.
Sometimes we have to turn off our
Where did the
video
fan
so
go?
that we can
He said he was gonna go log in.
hear.
I don't know, somewhere.
This conference will now be recorded.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, Dan, we
Yeah.
hear you.
Yes.
Echoey.
And it's echoing.
Daniel, I can hear you. Yes.
We're both.
So our issue is with the council chambers.
I believe that's right. Somehow the microphone there is not conveying to the rest of us.
Oh. So we could.
Does it work if you turn one of them off? Or no?
One guy.
I don't know. Sometimes I'm in meetings and then mine's going in and out, and they're like, "Just turn off your video." I'm like, "Okay, gladly."
No.
Apologize, everyone. Don't you just love it when this happens? Can we turn the sound up to the ceiling and put Dan's computer?
It's all good. No worries.
That might get rid of the reverberation.
That's why the college is selling the house.
Yeah.
Because enrollment's down,
Enrollment's
and
down,
they want
yeah.
everyone to go into the dorm.
Yep.
I'll let you know.
Huh.
They're starting to offload houses already.
I wish I could buy one of them to use.
Sign it, a new one. I'll let you know.
Okay. And I'm just close by, so
Yeah.
I can easily come over. That's not a problem at all.
Can we turn off the microphones?
Not ours.
How do we do it?
No, don't do that. I think you just press that.
Oh, down the other.
We can usually, I know sometimes people have to like call in microphones to try to get.
It would be awfully challenging if we have the reverb going on the whole
Oh,
time.
I know. That
Does it help if you turn off their video?
Yep, no problem on our end. We'll just stand by.
Yeah, they probably can just call in too. I've had that.
Have
happen.
both of you tried to call in and then or take your speaker system and in the GoToMeeting platform swap between speakers?
Yes. In settings, selected all of the speaker options. Also tried to use the browser settings and use the app settings. And we also separately tried to call in as well. Connected each time, just did not succeed in getting audio.
Not understanding.
Peter, I think an appropriate action would be for the consultants to present as is. I will keep notes, and then I will from the council chambers, and then I will relay those notes as we go. Those questions, I should say.
I don't know if that's the best idea.
So Daniel, you're in council chambers?
Okay, I'm just gonna look at it.
Did he just ask if we can hear in the council chamber?
Yeah.
Yes.
With an echo.
Yeah.
We can
But it's
hear, I
echoing.
don't know we can understand.
Right.
What we're going to do is we're going to ask them to give a solid presentation without you being able to ask any questions, and then Dan will give them questions through his computer.
Okay.
There you go.
We're flexible.
All right. Our game plan will be for your team to present the presentation all the way through. You can share your screen if you wish to have control so Peter isn't jockeying back and forth. We will keep notes from questions from the Planning Commission, and then I will leave the room and ask those questions.
Excellent. Okay. Happy to do so. Peter, I see your notes on the presentation. It's okay. I'll share my presentation. Let me pull it up so I have control.
We're not, if they're gonna go, we're not gonna be able to.
There we go. Excellent. I see it there. All right. Thank you everyone for hosting this presentation tonight. This is a brief presentation and summary of the Comprehensive Housing Study and Action Plan for the City of De Pere. My name is Robert O'Brien. I'm a Senior Housing Specialist at Camoin Associates. I'm joined tonight with Tom Doretsky, who's the VP and Director of Research. He was a project principal on this housing study. Connor Allen, who is not with us this evening, was a project analyst. Camoin Associates was founded 25 years ago by Robert Camoin. We are an economic development consulting firm. We work nationally. We've completed work in 46 states, plus the Virgin Islands, and we employ 25 more full-time staff. We're considered national leaders in real estate and housing analysis. We've also completed over 30 recent housing studies. Very briefly, the purpose of this housing study was to garner an understanding of the local housing market and to identify community-specific housing priorities, policy alternatives, and intervention strategies. The components of the housing study: for research, we conducted a site visit and tour of the city of De Pere. We conducted several interviews while we were there. We reviewed recent studies and plans that correspond with housing, and we also conducted a public survey. In the report, which was included in your packets as well, you'll find an executive summary, key findings of the data report, goals and strategies, an addendum with all the data reports and survey results. And for data, we looked at demographic trends, economic trends, existing housing inventory, housing affordability assessment, housing development trends, real estate and for sale market trends, a summary of housing market opportunities and barriers, and a housing needs analysis, a gap analysis of what the marketplace is missing compared to need. I'm going to go through 10 key findings from the data reports and move relatively quickly so we can go right into strategies and goals. And I'd welcome your questions after that time. The first key finding I wanted to share is how population is changing. You see that De Pere in the first decade of this century had a relatively robust population growth. In the next decade of the century, from 2010 to 2020, there was a 7.3% population growth, still very robust. And then following COVID, that population growth declined and is projected to be relatively stagnant over the next 5 years or so. You'll see this trend repeated in Brown County with the state of Wisconsin and in the nation as a whole. We had robust population growth for the first 2 decades, and then that has slowed down considerably. The census reports to us that for commuting patterns, 89% of those employed within the city of De Pere commute into the city, and only 15% of residents living in the city of De Pere actually work locally. De Pere has enjoyed relatively strong job growth. In the last 5 years or so, there's been 12.3% new jobs in the city, equaling nearly 3,000 new jobs, which will affect housing demand for new employees. As for housing starts, what we saw nationally was repeated in De Pere, which is strong housing growth in the first decade of the century from 2000 to 2010, followed by relatively strong growth, followed by a significant drop-off after the Great Recession in 2009. We went from 19% of new housing starts in the city of De Pere to just 6%. That has trickled with supply chain issues and labor shortages in the housing sector to 2.1%, and is estimated, following just trend patterns, to be just over 1% over the next 5 years. So housing growth has significantly slowed down in the city of De Pere, and you can see that also repeated in Brown County, Wisconsin, and the United States as a whole. That Great Recession drop is significant, and we see it all over the country. In terms of housing market performance, we see that the city of De Pere has a similar market sales performance to Brown County as a whole. Now you're going to have different price points throughout the county, but on average, the median sale price is very similar to what's happening in Brown County as a whole, and the months of supply of inventory is also very similar. Rental demand remains relatively strong in the city of De Pere. Nationally, at 5% vacancy rate is considered the benchmark for a healthy rental market. The city of De Pere hasn't come close in the last decade to that 5%, meaning that there's significantly strong demand in the city for rentals still. Despite, in this left-handed bar graph, you see an increase of almost 1,000 units in the last 5 years or so, and still the vacancy rate is declining. So the rental demand is unsatiated. We just want to show which household incomes are renting versus owning. Over half of household incomes, over half of households owning their homes are at 120% to over 150% of area median income, versus half of those renters are in the 35% to 80% of area median income. Housing cost burden is defined by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development as those spending 30% or more of their entire income on housing costs. For owner-occupied residents, those 65 years and older, the senior citizens and retirees, over a quarter of them are considered housing cost burden, spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs. At the same demographic, 65 years and older, nearly 45% of them are spending more than 30% of their income on rental costs. At the same time, those career path professionals, 35 to 64 years old, nearly a third of those folks who are renting right now are considered cost burden. Commodity Associates attempted to quantify the amount of housing demand or need for new housing in the city of De Pere. We've estimated about 2,500 units or interventions for housing are needed in the next 5 years. We've done this by tallying up the cost burden households, which amount to over 2,000. And then we've taken the difference between the historic trend of commuters coming into the city of De Pere and the increased change of commuters coming into the city of De Pere, and we estimate that that difference between the historic trend and the increase are the amount of commuters that would choose to live in De Pere if they had a housing option that suited their needs and their budgets. So from that number, we've estimated over 2,500 units are needed. Also, not included in that number, but we want to note from the census that over 1,000 households reported conditions of substandard housing, overcrowded households, obsolete housing, and underhoused residents. Well, those are usually younger folks who are still living in home or living with other people that they're unrelated to. These are not college students or high school students living at home intentionally. These are folks that would like to have their own place, but for financial reasons are stuck living in sort of group accommodations. I would also just like to point out that these are not mutually exclusive. You can live in overcrowded household and it could still be an underhoused resident as well. So for that reason, we don't have a finite number of how this tallies up. These are just individual notices of condition, and we just wanted to note that for the record. Finally, I just pulled one slide, 2 data points from the housing survey. One is what the most important issue indicated from survey takers in the home buying market, and cost of houses came out on top. While that seems self-evident, we conduct a survey across the country. That's not always the case, but it was the case in the city of De Pere. At the same time, similarly, in the rental market, we asked what the most pressing issue was, and the price of rent came out on top at nearly 64%. It was 61% for the cost of houses. I'll just note for the record that I believe nearly 58% of respondents said cost of taxes was the second largest issue in the home buying market. Just a moment, please. Great. I'd like to move into goals and strategies now. In response to this data analysis that we conducted, we created 2 goals, one for increasing the availability of home production and home ownership, and the other for increasing the availability of rentals. We'll start with rentals for the first goal. We've calculated that there are nearly 1,100 rental units needed in the next 5 years or so for low to moderate incomes. We have 5 strategies I'll share with you now to get to this target. The first is to establish a designated growth area for new construction, and that is to predetermine in the city of De Pere an area of the city that is pre-permitted, if you will, for density. We've already determined that it can handle, for the utilities, for traffic migration and other similar issues, it can handle density, and it is well suited in the character of that neighborhood to host density as well. So establishing an area that can already grow and developers would not need to ask for variance or any other contingencies in order to build density. The second strategy, 1.2, is to advertise a list of opportunity sites where the city is interested in partnering on development. And what this does is it starts a conversation that wouldn't otherwise likely happen by creating a list of opportunity sites that could host new housing development, where the city might be interested in providing TIF assistance, tax increment financing, perhaps assisting with infrastructure build-out for that development, or maybe community development block grants where applicable. But what it does is it invites developers to come forward and say, I might be interested in developing that site if it's available. It might also spur developers to reach out to the owner of that property and say, hey, are you considering selling it? I would like to develop it. And suddenly those conversations get rolling where they otherwise may not have happened. The third strategy out of 5 is to implement density bonuses for affordability. This could be as little as if there's a 4-unit allowed on site, perhaps allowing for up to 6 units if the property keeps its rents at a certain level, affordable to a certain AMI level. This strategy is pretty straightforward. Strategy number 4 is to provide city land or to build out the infrastructure in exchange for affordability deeds. This is providing the quid pro quo when developers come forward and say we would like a TIF for our development in order to make it affordable to us. Asking for an affordability deed in exchange for that might temper that conversation and provide value to the city of De Pere in what they're getting for providing that TIF assistance. And the same thing in exchanging public land for development, asking or requiring affordability deeds in return is a good exchange for that value. And finally, among increasing rental production is to provide a mechanism for financing backyard cottages in exchange for affordability deeds. Backyard cottages, or accessory dwelling units, as they're also called in other areas, are difficult to finance. They're also very expensive to build. And one of the reasons why they're difficult to finance is because it's difficult to find comps for lenders to find. It's also difficult to provide collateral. A bank who lends for a backyard cottage does not want to have to capture that, default and pull back that cottage separate from the full property. It's just not practical. And so banks are hesitant to lend to these, whereas if the city is able to establish a revolving loan fund or some other loan guarantee, it might start to finance these ADUs, these backyard cottages, and exchange that loan guarantee with the owner for an affordability, making these rentals affordable to certain AMI demographics. Just a couple brief case studies for the rental strategies we just outlined. Here's an example of a former horse racing track in the state of Maine in a town called Scarborough, population about 20,000. This large acreage parcel went for a dense campus. You can see in that picture there's a mix of apartments, condos, cottages. They have single-family houses, condos, townhomes, and they're even going to set up a tiny home village. It's a very walkable neighborhood. It was just very intentionally designed all at once to be a master campus that's walkable and drives the price points down because it's so dense. They worked hand in hand with the city in developing this, and it's just been very successful. These properties are selling like hotcakes. The second and last case study for the rental strategies I wanted to share, this is an example of opportunity sites that a town made available. This is also in the state of Maine, a town called Madison, not the same Madison as Wisconsin. But they also conducted a housing study, and following that housing study, they had several sites in the town drawn up with potential site concepts. You can see on the upper left-hand quadrant, an architect had just modeled how many housing units you might be able to fit on that property and how they might be outlaid given the neighborhood structure already. The town also went through and did a mock pro forma of how those properties might perform if they were developed. And with those, the town manager went around and talked to prospective developers. One team showed interest, and they did their own thing, but have since constructed, in the bottom right-hand corner, these apartment buildings that the architecture is made to mimic the surrounding architecture. Each one of these buildings you see in the bottom right-hand side contains, I believe, 8 or 9 apartments in them. They're all deeded affordable, and you can see that from this sketch, this parcel can hold 4 of those apartment houses, and the developer is donating a public playground on the site as well. But this all happened as a result of the town building concept site plans around some opportunity sites, putting those mock pro formas together, and then sort of shopping them around to developers before that came to fruition. This was an old defunct school site. The school had been removed. It was an empty town parcel and had no activity, no interest whatsoever in about a decade before these apartments were built as a result of these opportunity sites. Very good. I will move into the housing strategies that we put together. Come Associates estimates about 552 houses for households earning between 80% and 100% of AMI, area median income, are needed in the next 5 years or so. Strategy number 1 of 5 for the housing strategies is to rezone future residential areas with housing count minimums. Lenders and developers, it is easiest for lenders and developers to lend to and to construct what has been recently successful, what has been successful in their business plans over and over again. And so those are typically single-family homes on relatively larger lots that sell for higher prices. They're easy to find comps for. They're easy to provide collateral for. And so that's typically what home builders want to build and banks want to lend to. When the city can require housing count minimums per acre on new development sites, that will require both the developer and the lender to be more creative in how they're going to build multiple units, smaller units. These are home ownership units, and those smaller units will come with lower price points. Strategy number 2 out of 5 is to allow for gentle density, as we call it, in existing neighborhoods. This is as simple as in those zones where only single-family housing is allowed, no other housing is allowed, perhaps allowing at least a duplex to be built. Duplexes can be designed and constructed so they look like a single-family home. They simply have 2 front doors on them. And we think this is a gentle way to increase density in existing neighborhoods without disrupting the character of those built neighborhoods. Partner or promote rent-and-own models. This allows folks who may not have the financial wherewithal to provide a down payment, a significant down payment, especially first-time home buyers, to purchase a new property. They can rent to own the property, sometimes either saving towards that down payment, or sometimes that rental money for the first several years gets applied to the down payment, and then after a period of time, they have the option to purchase. Rent to own is very similar to leasing a vehicle, where you can lease it for a certain number of years, and you have the option to purchase it or not. You can walk away at the end of your lease. Strategy number 2.4 is to use land leases for affordability. This is also a national model. It's a similar business model to a traditional trailer park, except it's for homeownership, where a nonprofit or mission-based organization owns the land, and the tenant or resident owns the housing improvements on top of the land. What it does is it takes the land costs out of homeownership. That reduces the price of the property. So the new homeowner or home builder can build a house without the land costs factored in. They buy that house or they build that house for a lower cost because land costs have been deleted. They can live on that property and use the property however they like. They pay a nominal leasing fee for the property, but it's typically very low to keep costs down. In exchange for using that property, for leasing that property and building a house on top of it, there are price ceilings when that homeowner goes to sell the property in the future. They can still make a profit, but there are price ceilings in order to keep those properties affordable. Also, even when they go to sell it, the land costs are deleted from the sales price, keeping those prices affordable still. And the last strategy we'd like to offer is that we had surveyed surrounding municipalities for their development costs, and one thing that stood out to us is road construction in the city of Pere right now requires the city to construct the roads for the development. We encourage you to let developers price out that road construction and build to city standards. It is those reduced costs could potentially be pocketed by the developer, but given how competitive prices are right now, those increased costs by requiring the city to build it will inevitably be passed on to the buyer, whereas if there are savings that could be made, those might be used to adjust the price more affordably in a competitive market. I just have 2 case studies, and then I will open the floor to questions if there are any. The first case study is a rent-to-own model. This is in North Carolina. This company owns several developments, and they specialize in rent-to-own. Here are some of the finances of how that one works, where they mark out for 5 years what your rent will cost every single month, so you can plan accordingly. There are no surprise jumps in your rent. And they also have a schedule by which you can purchase the property after a certain number of months or years, and what the property will cost after those set times. They put all of their costs up front in terms of here's a hold fee, a security deposit, and what the rent will be. So it's very transparent. It's very easy for someone who is looking to buy to be able to plan financially how they might be able to rent that property and eventually own it if they're able. Just a moment, please. Great. The second case study I would offer, and the final case study, is a case study for land leases, as I described earlier. This is in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. This is a private nonprofit corporation that owns land all around Chapel Hill. They were founded in 1991, and they now have 332 permanently affordable homes in their inventory. Sometimes they build those houses themselves and they sell them. Sometimes they allow folks to construct their own homes on those properties. They have townhomes. They have market rate houses. They have subsidized houses. They have a whole gamut of different housing structures available to people. They also manage everything that happens on those properties. They provide the real estate services, so there are no brokers. They provide the closings, so you do not have to take an outside attorney to all those closings. They also manage the property, and they ensure the major systems of the property, the HVAC, the roof, etc. They also require first-time homebuyer and financial literacy education, so folks learn how to become homebuyers in this market. You know, these are homes for folks to sort of, I would say these are great first-time homes for people to get into the market, to get a feel for home ownership, to be able to budget for it, and then when they outgrow the space, to move out into the private sector outside of these land lease communities. I just have one snapshot of an example property in one of these land lease outfits. So here is an example of a townhouse. As you can see on the screen, the total monthly costs include all the costs below is about $1,200, and it's reserved for a tenant or new homeowner who makes under 80% of the area median income. And I just highlighted what 80% of AMI in that area is. For a single person, it's nearly $60,000. For a family of 4, it's nearly $85,000. Within that monthly cost includes the mortgage and principal, the property taxes, homeowner's insurance, a use fee, a stewardship fee, I'm not sure what those fees are, and then the homeowners association, which handles all the maintenance, as I mentioned before. That concludes my presentation. I apologize for the audio issues tonight, and Tom and I would welcome any questions the Plan Commission may have. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Are you able to hear me now? And he's not. So.
I am, yes, Daniel. Oh, yeah, is that Peter? Peter, yes, I hear you.
Peter. Yeah, this is Peter, Robert. Okay, so we have somehow magically fixed the communication while you gave your presentation. Thank you very much.
Victories.
Good job.
Then does our Plan Commission have questions now that he can hear us for Robert and Tom, our two presenters? The one that you were hearing was Robert.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand some of the data we have to use 54115 because we can't break it out specifically to the city limits of De Pere, so we have to also include Ledgeview, Lawrence, Hobart. But on page 14, there's a disclaimer for key finding 3 that says City of De Pere data is represented by zip code 54115. But then elsewhere, like for instance, key finding 6, which is on page 17, it looks at multifamily rental inventory trends and vacancy trends. And the footnote there, it lists properties like Quarry Park, Trellis Ridge, Co-Pilot Way that are not actually in the city of De Pere. So I think we need to make sure that when there's data being presented in the report, If it's not within the city proper, that there's proper disclosure of it being in the zip code only. And then also at the end, there's Appendix B data tables, and as existing city of De Pere multifamily property. A lot of these properties as well are in neighboring municipalities and not in De Pere. So that's just one thing I wanted to flag. But otherwise, I think the report's really well done. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that feedback.
That's
We can absolutely make those changes.
And some of those changes aren't strictly just because of census data. Like some of those are CoStar, some of those are other real estate website, and that's a little bit outside of our control. So yeah, we just have to make those disclaimers.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I guess for surrounding neighborhoods, were you guys did any of your research lead you to see any of the other surrounding communities starting to do some of these different things? I know kind of backyard cottages were mentioned from the rental aspect. And then almost kind of like the homeowners association fees. I was just curious if you're noticing like in the, the general area around De Pere, if other communities were doing that in your research?
Yeah, it's a good question. We did not survey or audit surrounding communities for all of their existing housing strategies. So that wasn't included in the report.
We can comment that we are one of the first ones to allow backyard cottages as an accessory dwelling unit as part of your most recent zoning code updates. But a funding program is separate from that one, but we're even one of the first ones just to even allow it as a use in the zoning code.
Yeah, and that's just not this general area. That's in northeast Wisconsin.
Yeah.
We're one of the first, if not one in the state.
And that's why I think maybe it would make it more attractive, as we're thinking outside of the box somewhat a little bit, to be able to attract people to, especially if, the demand is going down, how are we going to attract folks? So that was my thought.
When you were talking about the strategy regarding partnering on development,
Yeah.
does that include ownership partnerships?
Do you mean that the city may be actually a part owner in developments?
Right.
That's a political question for the city. We wouldn't normally recommend that the city become landlords or, partners or owners in developments. That's sort of a private sector deal, but there are plenty of ways that a city can be involved in a development in its lead up to its construction. And that is providing some financial assistance in their what's called the capital stack when they put all the financing together, and also the infrastructure build out that they need to do, sidewalks, streets, utilities, and so forth. Developers are always looking for help when it comes to those aspects. And that's really what they look to in a city, as being a partner in these developments, the upfront construction and financing.
Okay, I know you made mention of a loan fund. I have viewed a few of those in my days in banking, and those tend to turn into grants versus loans over time. And I guess I'm just curious as to what kind of insight you have or of some success stories along those lines.
Well, I would strongly urge you to, as a city, to hire a contract underwriter, as you might understand, who can look at those loans and only to make those revolving loans to folks who are creditworthy, or to make less risky loans to folks to guarantee that those monies can be recaptured. And really, it's also how you structure the oversight committee or oversight board who's going to look at that loan fund, whether they are sort of culturally more forgiving of loans or whether they will actually stick to the purpose of that program and require that loans get repaid. And sometimes it's also the source of the money. If the money came from, say, ARPA funds over COVID or something, sometimes communities can be more forgiving of that money being let out, whereas if it came directly from the City of De Pere tax funds, you would expect that taxpayers would want those funds to be revolved and repaid.
Agreed. And on the affordability deeds, Are I'm just thinking, is there an administrative cost to the city to engage in some of these strategies that, we may not presently be staffed for?
Sure. The administrative burden, I would say, is really oversight and enforcement. That the deed restriction is a one-time legal action where the deed is recorded that this, for so many years, this property will be rented affordably or sold affordably, but someone has to monitor that. And I would always recommend to municipal clients to feel that out. If there is a regional organization that is capable of doing that, seek that they can monitor those, whether it's a housing trust organization or some other entity that can do that. I would not try to put that burden on the city. But if we're only talking a couple dozen units overall or fewer, it might be something that's reasonable for the city to keep track of and not have to go through that burden of an outside entity monitoring that. But monitoring would be the burden, the cost for the city to ensure that those property owners that have those deed restrictions are in fact renting those out or selling those for the agreed upon affordability restraints.
Other models for that also including communities I've worked in the past where they've entered into a professional services reimbursement with those with a partner organization and or consultant to monitor those things with a 50-50 cost share, the municipality taking on a 50% share of it and the developer taking on a 50% share of those of that cost on an annual basis. So that way it's done professionally by somebody who has the experience doing it, and there is a cost sharing burden in that process. That happens as well.
And with the contract for deed or affordability deed, it gives the city control of the land in case things wouldn't work out?
Depends on how you craft the deed, I suppose. But yes, that's typically how especially if you're the original landowner of that, at that point, you're going to build in some protections in your development agreements and stuff like that. Those are separate even from deeds. That's just, we have the majority of the unbuilt lands in the community. Now, most of them are industrial, but there is a Southern Bridge part in the community that will open up about 500 to 600 acres, as we know, to development, and that is mostly privately owned. So there will be discussions at that point about how to craft any agreements that where they're requesting TIF assistance for anything. That's the time to start incorporating those provisions.
Yeah, question actually for staff. Given the potential growth in the southeast part of the city with the South Bridge connector going in, do you share the conclusion from the consultants that residential growth is going to be stagnant over the next 5 years? Personally, I'm a little more optimistic because of the southeast opportunities and even still a little bit on the southwest side. But just wondering if that's something that staff is kind of a conclusion that staff also shares, or if that's just the consultant.
So there's two components to this. This is a housing study based on data that is where our trends are going, where we're moving forward, where the U.S. Census and where the Wisconsin Population Lab is putting us from that perspective. A once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-generation project like the Southern Bridge Corridor is obviously going to be a monumental kind of growth chart for us, and understanding that is that 5 years out when the bridge is finished? Is that 7 years out? Is that 10 years out? The bridge won't be done until 2029, 2030, and that's 5 years out from where we are today.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of look at it from that perspective. Now, will development happen leading up to that? We'll be developing on the east side prior to the bridge probably being finished, but it probably will coincide very closely with it, because that's where a lot of the development pressures have come from. So when you look at that one, we've been working with our Walker consultants, who's our comp plan folks, to look at the southeast area plan and plan for growth that is in the overall growth area plan. And when they have done their analysis based off of what the steering committee originally talked to them about of mixed density commercial, high density residential, medium density, gradually feathering out to low density, there was a significant opportunity for growth, and that's really what we're shooting for, is the opportunity for growth. And without putting too much out in front of the cart in front of the horse, you're looking at several thousand units available of multifamily and single family that would be available depending on how dense that we that we push that density in that southeast area. So, and you'll start to see some of that trickle out after this.
And then Dan, they do recommend requiring density, which would be a change, I think, for us. We've never required that in a subdivision, right?
No, and it would be in your zoning code. Actually, you'd have minimum requirements versus maximum requirements, which is where we've typically gone. So,
okay, and then a question for the consultant. You also talk about really trying to push for smaller lot sizes, which we do allow now in our zoning code, and also smaller house sizes. Have you seen other municipalities put requirements on the actual like square footage size of houses, like requiring that half the houses in a new subdivision are 1,500 square feet or less?
No, I haven't seen the requirement on the square footage of the house being of a certain size, but the smaller they make the lots, and also sometimes the greater the allowances for a developer to build smaller units closer together with setback reductions and that sort of stuff, leads to the developer building them themselves organically.
Yep. Okay.
That picture I showed you of the Scarborough Downs, that dense urban neighborhood, that was the developers pushing to put these cottages side by side, very small footprint, very close together, and they sold very well.
and I do want to add one kind of not clarifying comment, but just contextual comment. I know Robert talked about how typically a municipality is not on the development side themselves. They're usually the partners with the development. About 2 plan commission meetings ago, we talked about our Southwest area plan where we potentially will be the lead developer, or at least the lead entitlement getter, I guess you would say, kind of creating the process, creating the standards, and then we'll determine whether or not we want to actually develop it or we want to sell off it to be developed how we want it to be developed. And the reason for that is we've created all these standards for smaller lot sizes, mixed density, adding duplexes in your neighborhood, adding townhomes, adding multifamily. And the developers aren't doing it because, as Robert mentioned, they're used to doing what they're good at. And so we're trying to stir the cart or stir the pot in this market a little bit by taking more of a proactive approach so that when that southeast side opens up post-bridge, we can either show that this model works in this region or it has to be tweaked. And so we're sort of taking a little bit of a pilot risk on this process, and that is very strategic on our part because of we're not seeing the interest in getting away from 80-foot wide, 90-foot wide, 100-foot wide lots. So.
Another question, quick, Brenda. It talks about how we need, I'm trying to find it again, over almost 1,200 new apartments in 5 years, and over 1,100 of them need to be affordable for tenants 80% or lower of area median income. So almost all of them. And I'm just wondering kind of what staff's perspective is on that, because we've talked a lot about, we would like to see more affordable residential units or apartment units, but the developers just want to do the market rate so they can, earn a higher profit. So I just wondering how realistic that would be to have like over 90% of our new apartments be for people who have 80% or less income.
I'll touch on that one a little bit here. We look at, if you're looking at the 80% of the area median income, which is what WIDA uses as their upper threshold for when documenting things. There's also 60% thresholds and 50% thresholds for true LIHTC projects. But in this case, some of their other funding programs are using that 80% threshold. So WIDA puts out a nice little chart for us every year about what is the definition of affordable for somebody who is making $55,000, which is 80% of the area median income for an individual for one family household. That's our 80%, roughly about that amount. 2 is 62, and again, this is based off of WIDA's calculations. And so for Brown County, you're looking at 62,750 for a 2-bedroom. 3-bedroom is 3-family household or 3-member household, 70,000. So people tend to think, oh, that means that family in that 2-bedroom, that's a $500 a month apartment. We sort of have to kind of get past that concept, because while that is a thought process of what affordable means, the true affordable definition is typically not spending more than 30% of your household income on housing related expenses, meaning not just your mortgage, not just your lease, but other things. So when HUD and WIDA put out their income restriction limits for lease restrictions, a 1-bedroom apartment in those categories is $1,470 a month. You know, so while developers aren't right now attaching themselves to the name of affordable housing, anybody who's under 1470 by definition is still meeting WIDA income limits. And I think, again, we have to sort of get past this notion that every apartment that is affordable is only $500, irregardless of the size, condition, space, the overall condition, age, all those things. So, like I said, $1,470 is still what is considered an affordable unit price for a 1-bedroom apartment. $1,765 for a 2, and $2,038 for a 3-bedroom apartment. So those are important factors to think about, and that's an education component that has to come after this. So, yeah, do I think a lot of them probably could meet that definition? Yeah, because we're not quite at $1,500 a month for every single 1-bedroom that's being built right now. So you just naturally, you can probably capture some of that.
Good. Any other questions? No? No? All right. I'll say, Robert and Tom, thanks for joining us, because I feel like the mayor would have said that. So thank you for joining us and presenting. That was wonderful data to, and obviously we have lots of that in our packet to go over as well. So thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Oh, wait, Dan.
And staff wants to say thank you as well to our consultant team that worked with on this process. They will be in here in person, I believe, at the council meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, at our next council meeting, there will be in-person attendance for the council to receive the plan.
Very similar, so the council can ask questions. And I also did want to also add to the statement that while they've given us the goals and sort of those initial strategies, it's going to be up to staff, the Plan Commission, the Redevelopment Authority, the council to craft even more goals and strategies underneath those kind of 5 or 6 overarching kind of visions. There's a lot more nuance that goes into those initial statements that they have, and it's going to be on us to make those additional implementation strategies come forward in the future.
Great.
And you mentioned earlier that this information was vital for the new comprehensive plan.
It's going to get fed right into it. So,
Yep.
And they're waiting for it. So,
Right.
All right. We're good? My cue to go on to item number 7?
I think we need
Nope.
an action item.
This is an action item, so you
Oh,
will
action
take
item.
to
So I need to
approve or deny it.
solicit some action. So we need a motion, I believe. Motion to what? Approve the draft? How about I move to approve the draft?
and recommend forwarding to council.
And I recommend forwarding it to council.
I'll second.
All right, so motion by me, second by Alderman Gantz. All those in
Quick
vote?
question.
Nope.
Dan, if we approve this, does this mean that we're essentially agreeing to the recommendations?
No, because it's still part of a overarching guiding document. So there's nothing in here that says you must do X, Y, Z, because you're just approving it by motion. You're not even approving it by resolution or ordinance. The council will take a look at it from that perspective and say, we're going to adopt this by resolution. We'll adopt this likely by resolution, not by ordinance, because then it's by resolution. So again, the stuff that comes into it and then gets fed into the comprehensive plan, that'll be a different nature, because comprehensive plan, when you make a zoning change, they must be in alignment with the comprehensive plan. So taking this component and those recommendations, feeding them into the comprehensive plan will actually have more of lasting impact, I guess you would say.
And that doesn't mean we'll take all the strategies and goals out of this.
Yeah,
into the plan
like I said,
as well.
you're accepting this as a motion, not by resolution or by anything else here. The council will be the one who will be taking those items, and just like any other project, you can take them piece by piece. You're not forced to do all of them.
Very good.
Now, the reason I asked it was just because the idea of the developers overseeing the road construction, my understanding is our city engineering and public works department have a lot of concerns with that. They like how it works now. So, that's just one example of something that I'm not necessarily on board with, but again, I'm fine with it being an option, in the plan.
I will let you know, because you've asked this question before, that if we've had you asked the question, should developers come in here and ask us how our process is going? And I will tell you that is probably one of the biggest heartburn pieces from it, because there's certain things that they deem aren't tracked appropriately. And I can touch on that later, but just an FYI, that's from a developer standpoint, I will let you know that that's something, and that's their concern, and that's why it was included in here. It's also why we asked for a comparison from our surrounding communities to see how our neighboring communities are doing, and are we artificially adding costs to our developments that other communities aren't. That was the reason for, understanding how we compare to our neighbors is really what it comes down to.
Okay.
That's excellent data.
How often do we run these surveys,
The study or the surveys?
the studies? and the
Studies are as
surveys?
frequently as we wish to run them. We haven't done a housing survey probably in 9 years or so. I think the last one was 14. I think it was under 14.
Yeah, just prior to my arrival here.
So, and every time you do one, it's not the same as it was the previous time because let's face it, housing pressures now are vastly different than what they were in 2014, coming 5 years out of a recession. So anytime you do a housing study, it's going to be different from what it was the day you opened it. So, while we do them periodically in between our comprehensive plans and stuff like that, they change over time.
Thank you.
Dare I say?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right, I know. Just going to confirm, we have a motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Gans, that we're approving the draft, moving it forward to council. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7. Discussion about site plans received since the June 2024 Plan Commission meeting and review of the status of recently approved development projects, which that is in our packet. Peter, anything to add?
Other than I'm proud of myself for getting that back up onto the screen really fast.
Good job.
I don't believe
small
that
victories.
the list that you see online is any different than what is in your meeting packet. Because I was out last week, I have not made any changes to this list. So this is pretty current to the status of our site plans and the reviews. So if you have any questions on a particular site plan, you can ask it of staff now.
Question?
Just wondering, Peter, about the Unity Hospice resale. I assume all of that is pending, the rezoning and everything, right?
Unity Hospice resale, you probably see it towards the top of the list as developer revising plans. I put it into that category because it fell to a denial status because of not having the proper zoning category. So once our project that we reviewed tonight goes through council and say it receives an approval status for the comprehensive plan amendment, then they can go ahead and apply for rezoning, which this group will see again. Once that rezoning goes through, they then can finalize their site plan.
Okay.
So, but until that time, you'll probably see it just kind of hanging out at the top of this list.
Just a question I've asked in previous ones where we've got some site plan approvals that are over a year old. Any issues or discussion there?
We do have a number of projects that do go beyond that year mark, as Dan has explained in the past. Individuals do have 1 year to apply for a inspection permit to begin building their site, and then that permit remains valid for another year. So if somebody really wanted to wait to that 364th day, they could technically wait almost 2 years before they put a shovel into the ground. That's why some of these projects do last longer than a year.
No concerns, though, on your part?
No, we're not.
Jonathan?
Just wondering why the Caribou Coffee at 803 is under staff review, because it is under construction right now.
They made some changes to their signage. They went into an agreement with the city on how large certain things on the site were going to be, how many and where signage in particular was going to be, and then they came back with all their sign permits, which were drastically different than what the site plan was approved for. So they had to go back and resubmit their site plan. I could be really mean and pull all of their construction permits while doing that, but it's not really relevant to do while we were just in a reviewing phase of process. If we were changing something like realizing a foundation or a wall was going to completely change, that would be a totally different story. But if they're doing a change to signage, I can just kind of come back and say, no, you can't have that new version of signage, and without actually changing the structure itself. So that's why we're letting them continue to build.
Okay, thanks.
Good call.
Makes sense.
Nope. And with that was discussion, so no action, correct? All right, and I think I have my final duty here tonight that I'm going to make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Anybody care to second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Grant. Motion by me, second by Grant to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for being patient with me, friends. We are officially adjourned.